upstairs. What if you were mayor? What would your efforts to regulate or not regulate Uber look like?
So first of all, I just got an actual taxi ride down here from a gentleman who pays $2,500 a month rent, family of 4 in Pacifica, and because of the massive changes, he is no longer able to make ends meet. I think we need to level the playing field in the world of new technology. Everybody should be required to have the same level of training. Everybody should adhere to the same rules, have the same level of insurance. And for the consumer, this notion of surge pricing, really there needs to be consumer protections. One day you might get in an Uber and it costs $7, and the next day you get in the same Uber and it can cost you $100. And so there has to be a consumer protection element as well. So I think it's incumbent upon our elected officials at the local, state, and national levels to regulate the new economy. This is an economy that right now my heart goes out to Uber and Lyft drivers in the same way it goes out to taxi cab drivers, which is they're being exploited. This new economy, they're not getting health benefits, they're not able to make ends meet, and it's a race to the bottom. And it is time that San Francisco be the leader that has been on so many things, on minimum wage, on universal health care before Barack Obama was president of the United States. We should take care of our taxi industry.
A lot of people say that customers love Uber and Lyft. They want more of this sort of service. They want it to be as cheap as possible. Regulation would get in the way of that.
So there is no question that we should have had more taxis on the streets of San Francisco, but that doesn't mean that we should punish people who, for generations, are good drivers. They know their way around the city. They're subjected to higher levels of scrutiny of background checks, of safety, of insurance, and that's not been the case in many elements of the new economy.
And so, if you ran the zoo, so to speak, what would regulation of Uber and Lyft and services like that look like?
So I think that we should have a level playing field. Everybody should be required to have the same level of insurance, the same level of training. And I've been in Ubers where they don't know their way around the city. They're constantly looking at that little GPS unit, and frankly, that's not safe.
How do you handle what happened in Madison, Wisconsin, where the state actually came in and told the city, you guys are not allowed to regulate these vehicles. They're the purview of the state?
I think that these new multi-billion-dollar companies have remarkable influence. They have loads of lobbyists. They give huge amounts of political donations, but they aren't necessarily doing what is in the public interest and in the interest of workers in the United States of America.
All right, thank you.
Could you comment on the amount of money the city is spending on police operations and blocking traffic to protect the mayors from having to see protesters and to protect Uber?
I have no idea how much money that is. I just got here. I came up Market Street, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on around the corner, but there seems to be a very robust police presence here.
Hold on.
Uber is paying for it.
Is that true? I just also have to say that just relative to a name, and this is just me as a Jewish guy talking, but the name Uber really bothers me. It reminds me of Uber alles, and it reminds me of crushing people, and I think we live in a more just society than that.
There also has to be standards for what, though?
Consumer protection, and specifically I'm referring to surge pricing, where based on some computer algorithm, one day you may pay $7 for a ride that the next day the same ride costs twice or 3 times that much.
But isn't that true with traffic anyway?
Traffic?
Traffic in taxi cabs. One day might be $20 for an airport, another day it might be $40.
No. The rate is the same. If you're stuck in traffic, there is a fixed rate for what you pay for every minute that you are not moving. As compared to Uber and Lyft, which is based, they have an algorithm, a computer algorithm based on demand, where it's not a function of time or under the way taxi cabs are regulated. You pay for distance and for time, okay? And there is what's called a drop, which is $3.50, and then there is a rate, which is every eighth of a mile how much you pay, and for every minute that you're stuck idling, how much you pay. As compared to Uber, which is not regulated at all, where they might say, here's the example I'm trying to give you, Emily, which is your same drive, same distance, that takes the same exact amount of time, may be one day $5 and the next day $20. As Willie Brown put in his column a few months ago when there was some event, I forget what it was, hardly strictly bluegrass, and some friend of his ended up being charged like $140 for, what was normally a $15 or $20 trip. And so I think there's a consumer protection aspect that goes far beyond the issue of the fact that the taxi industry and all of the people who have been a part of it, 6,000 people, are having a really tough time. And this government is not taking care of long-term workers who have contributed to San Francisco, many of whom live in San Francisco. While Uber is undoubtedly extremely convenient, I think the city has an obligation to create a level, fair playing field for all entrants in the industry. So right now, I think there are two options. One is we remove all the rules related to taxis, or we subject everybody to the same rules.
Exactly. Well said. Yeah.
So no rules or subject everyone to the same rules. What would that look like for Uber?
Well, for Uber, that would look like the level of background checks that a taxi cab worker has to undergo. It would look like a level of training which a taxi cab worker has to do before they can receive an A permit. I think insurance, which heretofore has been a significant issue, is starting to be addressed, but it still has yet to be, I think, fully addressed. We all witnessed that very tragic death of a young child where Uber's response was that the driver was between shifts and therefore Uber was not responsible. That could never happen in a taxi.
It's insured 24/7.
So is Mayor Lee failing on this?
Well, I'm still waiting for Mayor Lee's technology task force that he said was going to meet some 2 years ago, that was going to address these issues, to meet and to actually do the hard policy work and come up with a set of recommendations for lawmakers to consider. Right now, it's the Wild West, and while San Francisco is certainly enjoying newfound wealth and prosperity, this is, to my mind, akin in some ways to the railroad barons of the 1800s.
A candidate or what?
Akin to the exploitive practices of the railway barons of the 1850s and 1860s. The octopus. Remember the octopus? I don't know if you know this story, but there was one horrific accident that Yellow Cab had years ago, and Yellow Cab was self-insured. They had to take $15 million out of their pockets to pay that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a famous case.
It happened right here, didn't it?
Yeah,
It happened here.
after him too.
No, it's fine.
Uber and Lyft, they're not wheelchair compliant.
The thing is that if
Well,
any
actually, I'm sorry to interrupt. That's actually another very good point, which is that the city of San Francisco has imposed upon the taxi industry a number of regulations, including but not limited to what's called ramp taxis, that they are ADA compliant, as well as we impose on the taxi industry as an environmental measure a number of years ago, I believe I was the author of that legislation, that they had to convert their entire fleet within 3 years to be all compressed natural gas and or hybrid vehicles. And so, there's also an environmental aspect to this, which is that the city has been flooded with some 10,000 additional vehicles, all looking for needles in a haystack. Not only has it resulted in financial impacts to 6,000 taxi cab drivers, but it's resulted in environmental impacts because none of these vehicles are subject to the environmental regulations that the taxi industry is subject to.
Yeah.
justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. If we don't get no justice, you don't get no peace. If we don't get no justice, you don't get no peace.